Welcome to Camp Blount, Fayetteville, Lincoln County. At this time, I would ask that you stand if you're seated, remove your hat wear, and we will have our invocation and our pledge to the flag. Today, the invocation will be given by the pastor at First Presbyterian, Bruce McVeigh, and one of my favorite Lincoln Countyans, Billy Hall, will be doing our pledge to the flag. And the flag is behind you there. So if y'all would come forward and give the invocation and followed by the pledge.
Please pray with me. God of the ages, whose almighty hand created the beauty of the earth and our majestic homeland here in Middle Tennessee, we give you thanks and praise. We bless you for the fortitude of our forefathers memorialized here, the original Tennessee volunteers who assembled on this spot at Camp Blount some 2 centuries ago. We bless you for continuing to imbue the spirit of volunteerism within us during this modern age. Make us your ambassadors, O God, and guide our feet in the way of peace. We ask your blessing on all of our leaders assembled here today, including Governor Lee, Mayors Newman and Whisenant, our legislators, and all other elected officials. Illumine their hearts and minds so that they follow your will, not their own. Inspire them to work for justice and peace for Tennesseans of every stripe, all of whom are created in your divine image. Bless our work here today and in the future, O Lord. Help us to hand down the spirit of the volunteer, the spirit of service, to our children and grandchildren, just as our ancestors have done for us. Guide our feet in the way of peace, O Prince of Peace, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Now, if everyone would share the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Bruce. Pat Marsh, who has represented Lincoln County since he was first elected to the state legislature, he's a Lincoln County native. Next to the governor, he may be the most influential person on the Hill. And at this time, I'd like to recognize for remarks my friend and our representative, Representative Pat Marsh.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's wonderful weather, great crowd, unbelievable crowd. Thank all of you for coming out. We're honored that we can have this wonderful park here in Fayetteville and Lincoln County. We're so proud that the state has put funds in, the county's put funds. We're so glad that Dr. Beasley and Randy and so many people, former Mayor Mansfield, current Mayor Bill Newman, have all put many hours of work in this, and the city of Fayetteville's put many hours of work. It is a great jewel in our toolbox here, so I'm so proud to be a part of it. Now we had a wonderful day in Nashville yesterday. We had Lincoln County Hamburger Day on the Hill. A lot of you were up here yesterday, and it was fabulous weather. The Lincoln County Livestock Association cooked 1,200 burgers. The legislature was excited about it for weeks, and it went off without a hitch, and I really appreciate you all coming. And the governor stopped by to thank all the people cooking, so it was a great day. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Farris Beasley, who's been one of the driving forces behind this. Dr. Beasley, thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Pat. And Governor, we're delighted to have you with us today. We're honored. Brief history lesson. About 4 years ago, the state of Tennessee purchased the remaining 40 acres of Camp Blount. And since that time, we've been working very hard to develop Camp Blount as Tennessee's most recent historic site. We work under the watchful eye of the Historical Commission, Tennessee State Historical Commission, and the Wars Commission, because we want everything that we do here to be historically correct. ask you to look at this portrait right here. This is an artist's perception of what happened here October the 11th, 1813. David Wright, historical portrait painter, did this portrait for us. I'll tell you about the key people in the forefront. The man on the right on the horse is Lieutenant General Andrew Jackson. The person next to him is Ensign Sam Houston of the 39th U.S. Infantry. And the third person there is Sergeant David Crockett, who was scout for General Jackson in the Indian War. A local doctor is the fourth man there. Now, these are the people in the forefront of the portrait, but they're not the most important people in the picture. If you look behind the horse, you'll see a congregation of soldiers. That's the Tennessee Volunteers. They're the ones that left their home, left their families in view of the Indian threat that was going on to go to war. And some of them sacrificed their lives, of course. So why were these people here on that date, and where were they going? October 1813, the middle of the War of 1812. Great Britain and America declared war against each other again, kind of a continuation of the Revolutionary War. The British controlled the Atlantic Ocean, bombarded our coast to cut down on our trade with Europe, landed at Baltimore Harbor, walked and burned the new White House, burned the new Capitol building, got back in their ships and went to Jamaica to plan for the invasion of New Orleans. That was pretty significant. So how could Lincoln County and Fayetteville have been involved in that? Well, we really weren't. But the British had one other facet to their war. They armed the Indians on the frontier. Several of the Indian tribes had British rifles. And this is where Tennessee came in. The Creek Indians were having a civil war at the time, and the warring faction of the Creeks wanted to send a message to President Madison that they were never going to give up their lands, they were not going to sign any treaties, and they were not going to the reservation. So they had to do something to catch his attention. And in late August, they attacked a small military fort, Fort Mims, near Mobile. They attacked at dawn. 1,000 Creek Indian braves attacked the fort that had the settlers around there who knew about the Indian threat, so they'd all crowded into the fort. Attacked at dawn and killed everybody in the fort. 250 men, women, children, babies, the military garrison. This massacre, when word of it got to Washington, shocked President Madison, of course, so he had to do something. He in turn called the governor of Tennessee, Governor Wiley Blount, to answer that massacre. Now, why Tennessee? Tennessee was a frontier state that was nearest to that massacre. There was no Mississippi, no Alabama, no Louisiana at this time. Governor Blount, in turn, called on Lieutenant General Andrew Jackson to call forth the militia and as many volunteers as he could raise, and call for them to meet here in Fayetteville, the nearest town to the incident, on the south banks of the Elk River. He called for 2,500 volunteers. 4,500 showed up. A week later, for the first time, a newspaper in Nashville wrote an article about it, and for the first time used the term Tennessee, the volunteer state. General Jackson kept a diary during the Creek Indian War and also during the Battle of New Orleans. And many times in the diary, he used the term, my Tennessee Volunteers. So those of us here in Fayetteville think we have a little bit of a claim to that famous expression. They left here in October 1813, finally surrounded the creeks at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in late March. killed 900 Indian braves. Jackson lost 45 soldiers. One massacre answered another massacre. President Madison was so impressed with General Jackson that he appointed him a lieutenant general in the regular U.S. Army and gave him the responsibility to protect New Orleans. The British, of course, came in late December 1814 to attack New Orleans. They were going to turn it into a British colony, control all the commerce on the Mississippi River. Jackson was waiting for them with 4,000 men. The British brought 14,000 men from Jamaica. They only brought 8,000 to the battlefield. The battle only lasted about 2 hours. Jackson, with no professional military education, as far as we know, was leading a group of 8 companies that had no combat experience, had never fought together before. And they were facing General Pakenham, combat experienced army, had just gotten through defeating Napoleon. Battle only took 2 hours because Jackson put them on a field where the British were totally out of the battle. And they suffered 1,200 casualties. Jackson lost 11 men. So Tennessee and Fayetteville were responsible for sending troops to 2 of the most important battles in the War of 1812, the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, and then the final battle, Battle of New Orleans. So we have a lot to be proud of. The statue you're looking at was put up last summer. It's the only statue to a Tennessee volunteer in the state. It was designed by Wayne Hyde, a dairy farmer in Pennsylvania, and he did an unbelievable job. He's done about 15 like this. He sent a miniaturette like this to compete with 2 other people who sent miniaturettes. We picked his as the winner. And then we took that miniaturette to Nashville to put it before 3 of the top historians in Tennessee to be sure it was exactly historically correct. And they made some corrections on it. So as far as we know, and to the best of our ability, this statue is historically correct. His fringed hunting frock and hat are exactly what the soldiers would have been wearing at that time. His rifle is an exact replica of the only surviving rifle belonging to David Crockett. That rifle's in the East Tennessee Museum in Knoxville. His canteen, powder horn, you can't hardly see his tomahawk over here under his belt. The bedroll on his back are all what he would have worn at that time. So we're pretty proud of that statue. End of history lesson, Governor. Got a little bit of memento to give you. Remember this trip down here. Governor, I know you live on a farm.
Yes, sir.
And you live on the farm that you were born on, and grew up on. And you have a cattle herd.
That's right.
Hereford cattle.
That's right.
And I know you're a busy man, but you get to check the cow herd
I
every
do.
now and then,
I
say
do.
on the weekend.
Pretty every week.
This weekend, when you check the cows, I want you to be wearing a significant hat. I want you to be wearing a hat with the. I want you to be wearing a hat with the logo of the only existing Tennessee volunteer statue in Tennessee.
Thank you, sir.
You stay up here with me because I know that fixed today. It's a good thing Dr. Beasley doesn't have any political ambition. He might be a challenger. He might be. I've been so excited when Governor Lee said he was going to come down today. And we're not going to take any more of his time up, but we appreciate all you do for Lincoln County, have done for Lincoln County, what you stand for Tennessee, that we can be as proud of you as we are. And I just want you to know that we really thank you, not only for the honor of holding the office, but the character in your heart that you represent for the people of Tennessee, a Christian man that deserves all the recognition you give us. we're ready for some remarks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Beasley. This hat might be a little too fancy for me to wear at the farm, but I got some good places I can wear it. Thank you very much. That is a nice hat. And that is a remarkable monument to the spirit of the people of Tennessee, the volunteer spirit that makes us a part of the greatest state in the country. We live in the greatest state in the country here in Tennessee. And it's events like this and gatherings like this that remind us of that. And I'm honored to be here today with the mayors, with Representative Marsh, who there are days when he's more influential than I am on Capitol Hill, Dr. Beasley. He certainly is a friend to me and a great leader for this state. You all should be very proud to have him working alongside me and representing you in this community up at the Capitol. And it's fine, you know, it's good what happens in the Capitol, but it's actually what happens out here where people's lives are changed. And what's happening in this community right now, all over the community, impacting people's lives for good. That's the reason that my wife, Maria, I'm proud to have First Lady Maria with me today. She travels with me pretty much everywhere I go. I say that we pray every day, both of us do, that our lives in this role, that we will have wisdom and discernment on how to spend our lives in a way that impacts people's lives for good. Every decision we make is not something that everybody always agrees on, but we can agree on one thing, that and the two of us can, that our heart and desire is to make our communities stronger and richer and deeper and more purposeful, that we remember our history so that we can create a future for the next generation. You know, Tennessee is 225 years old this year. We have gone from one location to the other across this state, making our way through every county from last June 1st when the kickoff for our 225 celebration started, to every community, every county across the state, to celebrate Tennessee, to celebrate our history. And we're calling it Untold Tennesseans. It's really not the famous history-making people that have made Tennessee the greatest state in the nation. It's her people, the regular, everyday, untold stories of the men and women in this community that have come together and transformed and worked through our differences and become a more perfect union, recognizing that we have weaknesses and flaws and challenges that we got to address, but we do that as Tennesseans. And we are volunteers. We do have a different spirit than others. And let me tell you, in the job I'm in right now, I have the privilege of working together with governors from all over America. And I get an inside view into states from all over America. And we are very fortunate to be Tennesseans. In fact, we're the envy of many states. And it's reflecting in the fact that we're one of the most moved to states in the country. Right now, there are more people moving into Tennessee than almost any state in America. By some measurements, we are the most moved to state in the country. And there's a reason for that. Y'all know it. You know what's different about Fayetteville and Lincoln County and Tennessee. You know what's different about our people. You know what's attractive to people from all across America. We are a land of opportunity here in Tennessee. We're a land where people find security, where people understand and have freedom, and we know how valuable that is. These men that died to help create and sustain this nation early in its founding, they knew that this nation wasn't a perfect nation, but that it was on a path, as it still is today, to understanding what opportunity and security and freedom mean. And we're investing in those things in this state. We are You know, you talk about being one of the envy of other states. You know, there were only 7 states in America that had a positive economic activity through the pandemic from April 2020 to April 2021. Tennessee was one of those 7 states. We know how to manage a budget in this state. We know how to run our finances in this state. We know how to not overtax our citizens. We're also the lowest tax per capita state in America. And all of that means that we can invest in things like broadband expansion in rural communities, vocational and technical and agricultural education, which y'all know I'm significantly invested in, very, very focused on in this state. Executive order number 1 in my administration was the development of economies in rural Tennessee. I believe that what happens in rural Tennessee matters to every single Tennessean, and we have to recognize that our rural communities are the part of the fabric that makes up this remarkable state that we live in. So I'm real proud to come out here today. Dr. Beasley, I was a 4-H'er when I was a kid. His son, Danny, was, he showed Angus cattle, I showed Hereford cattle, but we showed cattle together, and we were very involved at the state level all across in 4-H and ag-related youth activities. And so we have a long history, our families do, because of my relationship with his son. And so I want to have I got a special presentation for him today. Pat Marsh, will you come up here too? Dr. Beasley, will you step up here? This is a resolution. It's a House joint resolution. Signed, it's really presented by Representative Marsh and Senator Reeves and Watson, and it's signed by the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House and myself. And it is, I won't read the whole thing, but this is a resolution to honor and congratulate Dr. Farris Beasley on his receipt of the Governor's Volunteer Stars Award. He is, as you know, he's an example of people in our community that care, people in our community that love, people in our community that are committed to the sustenance of what makes Tennessee so great. And we're honored for you to receive this, but we're honored to have you as part of this state. Thank you very much. Thank y'all for coming out today. It's a big crowd. It's a beautiful afternoon to celebrate the beauty of our state and the beauty of this community. And Maria and I are just proud as we can be to be down here. And I love the job I have most days. I'm certainly honored to have the job that I have. It's the highest honor that I have to serve as your governor. And I'll tell you, my best days are when I leave the Capitol and when I come out and interact and meet and shake hands with and see what makes Tennessee so great. It's not its leaders, it's not what's happening there in the Capitol that makes it great. It's the people, and being out among them is the thing that gives me the most pleasure in this job that I have. But it's my highest honor to serve you. I'm grateful for the privilege to do so, Maria and I both, and we're very honored to be here today. Thank you very much.
Governor, we also want to state that we want to thank you for thinking of citizens like ourselves during the pandemic and helping spearhead millions of dollars that went to not just the larger communities but our communities as well, for us to be able to sustain and help during this time. And as a token, we'd like to give you, both mayors and all the citizens of Lincoln County, this statuette to take back with you. It's just a token, and we're very appreciative and very hopeful. And this is just the beginning. We want to keep developing this state park into a much bigger venue and make it a destination place for people to come. So we want to present this to you right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's heavy. Sorry, thank you.
Don, am I in you?